networking isn't a one-off thing, right? It's an art and a talent, right? So what does that mean? You have to practice, practice, practice.
Welcome to the podcast about communication in business. I'm your host, George Torok. Did you know that I'm known as the speech coach for executives? Because I help business leaders deliver the intended message for greater success. And we do that through one-on-one coaching or group training for the team. On this podcast, you will hear advice and insights from communication experts from around the world. My guest today is Michael A. Forman. Here's 3 facts that I think you should know about Michael. 1, he is author of the book Networking Unleashed, Mastering the Art of Networking. Guess what we're going to talk about today? And 2, he's a husband and father. And 3, he's a veteran of the U.S. Air Force with a stint at Desert Storm. And I'm sure there's some lessons that he's learned from the military that apply to smarter life these days. Michael Forman, welcome to Your Intended Message.
Thank you, George. I'm so glad to be here today, and I can't wait to share some of my insights, the intended message that we have.
We're eager to hear. And networking is one of those activities that people sometimes think, oh, I gotta do networking. Oh, the boss told me to go out and network, or I'm an entrepreneur and I've got to go out and network. Oh, I got to meet all these people. I don't like them. They're going to say stupid. They're going to bore me and waste my time. What's your advice to people who are reluctant or even afraid of networking? How do you get them interested?
Actually, I look at it from the other way, because I am so passionate about networking. Because look, you get to go out, you get to meet new people, new places, new everything else like that. But it's what you do. So for the people that don't want to go out, don't want to meet new people, just I want you to table that idea just for the first time. Go out there and truly enjoy yourself, right? So when you go out to network, the first thing you do is try to think, oh my God, I have this product and I have to sell it and I have to do all this. When you really have to change that philosophy, because you should network with a servant's heart, right? You should go out there and say, okay, what can I do for this person, for these people? And try to think of networking as giving rather than receiving. So if you go there and you try to make those people or be a referral partner for those people, then you'll enjoy it so much more.
Giving versus receiving. That's flipping the mindset, because people think, oh, I got to get some leads. I got to get some business, got to drum up some business. And how do you do that if you're giving?
Well, networking isn't an instantaneous thing. Right? You don't go out to network and say, oh, look, unless you sell widgets, right? You sell widgets for $3. You sell 6 of them and like, oh, I've done it, right? Usually you're service based or you're selling bigger items or something else like that. So when Zig Ziglar said it the best, when you go out and to give, because what goes around does come around, right? So if you're known for the person, because listen, in my area, I'm known as a person putting 2 people together, right? I have, oh, you do this, you do that. You're a great match, right? And then I walk away. Nothing in it for me. But they both get a lot out of it. So eventually, one of those 2 people are going to say, oh, you know what? Michael did that for me, so I'm going to give it back to him. And that's really the best way to do it.
And interesting, Michael, I attended an event this past week and the founder of the program, of the event, and he knows me, we talked briefly, and then he made a point of introducing me to someone else that he saw. And I noticed him doing that throughout the program. He continued to introduce people to each other. And I was amazed how he could introduce people and remember so much about them when he's introducing. He wasn't just looking at the name tag and saying, this is George. No, he gave a glowing introduction about me and about the other person. How can someone do that? How can you remember all that facts, and how can you do it so eagerly?
Well, you know what? That's very difficult, right? Because you have to have a good memory and everything else. But networking isn't a one-off thing, right? It's an art and a talent, right? So what does that mean? You have to practice, 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 right? So if you go out and do that, if you become the person to introduce two people, the first time it may be a little shaky. The second time may be a little shaky, but less. The third time, the fourth time, the fifth time, after a while, it becomes, you do it by rote. Hey, George. Oh, look, let me introduce you to Michael. Listen, George is a great guy. Da, 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 da. So it becomes easier. So I'm sure that person has been doing it for quite some time. So that's what he does. So you know what? That's what you should do. So even if you're just going to the event, you should just, think about it that way and think about introducing somebody, or again, having the servant's heart and just seeing how you can give.
Other than introductions, what else can you give?
What else can you give besides an introduction? An introduction is probably the most difficult part, believe it or not, right? Because after the introduction, you know something about the person. Otherwise, you wouldn't be introducing, right? But so you can take that little bit of knowledge and just expand on it. Not be distrustful or distasteful or anything like that. But you can expand on it and then do the same thing with the other person, right? So it gives you enough where each of those people have enough to talk about. Say, oh, Michael said this about, we want to tell me a little bit more about that? Sure. And go on to it.
Michael, let's assume that we meet cold at a networking event. We're standing there awkwardly, and we happen to look up and make eye contact. And I'm thinking, I don't know, this guy looks kind of, scruffy looking. I'll say hello to him. How do we start? How do we make that introduction without appearing, just out of place?
Well, first of all, you never go scruffy looking. Okay. Always look your best, always dress appropriately. And that's really a key factor, because when you walk up, you say, hey, you know something? That's a great looking blazer. Oh, you know what? Those shoes it's a great looking pair of shoes. Where'd you get them? And just start the conversation that way. And one thing will lead to another, but you've broken the ice. You started that conversation.
And that's curious. I ran into an individual at this event, who I know already. I've talked with before. I know him. And I commented about how trim and slim he looked. And I asked, how do you do that? And then he started telling me about his vegan, diet that he was trying, he was experimenting with now. So the conversation just flowed from there, just from a simple, compliment and observation. It could start that simple.
It could really start that simple. I use the word form whenever I am about and approaching somebody. That form is family, occupation, recreation, and a message that we can get onto the same level. Because any one of those items you can choose and have the other person talk about themselves. They can talk about their family, their husband, wife, sister, brother, son, daughter, youth baseball, youth football. I was a coach for 16 years. I was an umpire for 3 years. So I can really talk with somebody about youth sports. But you want to talk about their occupation? The occupation is usually, that's why they're there. They're there because of their occupation. So that's really an easy one. But let's move on to recreation. Say, well, what do you like to do? Do you like to go skiing, boating, surfing? What do you like to do? And have them talk about that, because know you, like you, trust you, they'll do business with you. That's the mantra of networking. So the more that they talk, the lower that barrier becomes and that trust factor increases, right? So as long as you get that trust factor, then you can move ahead to the next step.
Trust is built by allowing the other person to speak and listen to them?
More or less. Yeah. Because listening that's very important, right? Because you have to have active listening in order to be successful. Now, what does listening mean? Listening doesn't mean hearing, right? Because usually when somebody says something to you, you're thinking about the next thing that you want to say and bring that up. Totally wrong. Okay. You listen to the other person, right? You listen to it and then you pause. That pause is so important, right? You pause after they finish because what does that tell the other person? That you have been listening and you respond with something that they said, because that will reinforce that whole idea. And then he'll say, this guy was listening to me, and go on a little bit further than that. So so that's the beginning part of it.
So it could be something as simple as repeating some part of what they said as you're thinking about that or absorbing it, or just to reinforce that you actually heard what they were saying.
Yes, exactly. And, you can speak with him about whatever it was that he was saying, and you expand on that idea because it was something that he or she introduced into the conversation, and you're talking about that. You're not talking about what you do, what you want to say, or anything like that. Not important. But you know what? After you finish that whole conversation, you haven't described what you do. I think you barely even told them what your name was. You say, something? I like what you do. I like how you do it. How can I make you more successful? What can I do to be a good referral partner for you? That usually blows them away. He's like, I don't even know what you do yet. I know that, but I liked what you do. So what can I do to make you more successful? And that usually starts a very good conversation.
And Michael, I can't remember the last time someone ever said that to me. Gee, George, how can I make you more successful? Other than maybe a real good friend, but I can't remember someone. And that's such a powerful phrase.
It's so powerful that when you do use it, that's why I said it usually blows them away, because it's very powerful. And it's like you're putting him up on a pedestal saying, look, I'm going to make you more successful. How can I do it?
And so we haven't even got into all this stuff I got to sell you. And what do you want to pick? You want to start with the free trial today? You get a free trial for 7 days. And then after, we didn't even get to that part. And I walk away. I've met you and I've helped you, but I didn't get a lead. How do I get something out of this?
Well, after that whole conversation, you've exchanged business cards, right? So now take his business card. On the back of the business card, write down today's date, whatever the name of the event you were at, and something you spoke about. And all that does is that, because it will remind you in 2 weeks what you did, because you should speak to, I would say, with a 3 or 4 hour event, at 15 or 20 people. That's it. I used to be in the mortgage industry, and I used to go to these networking events. I used to come home with a shoebox filled with business cards, say, look how good I did. And I didn't realize how bad I did, right? Because I was collecting customers and not relationships. And that's what the whole thing is, collecting relationships. And then that will tee you up for your follow-up, which I feel is more important than actually meeting the person. But I have a secret sauce for the follow-up, which, believe me, you'll get a response. Positive or negative, I can't guarantee that, but you will get a response.
Okay, you've teased us. What's that secret sauce?
Okay. Well, after the event, after you have 15 or 20 cards, you go home or back to the office, whatever the case may be. You write the first email. Hey, George, this is Michael. Thank you very much for your time tonight. I had a great time. Looking forward to it again, Michael. That's it. Nothing else. But the next morning, ready for this? You write a handwritten thank you card. handwritten. I keep 50 of them in my briefcase, right? Hey, George, this is Michael. I met you on such and such date at such and such an event. We spoke about this. Looking forward to doing business with you, Michael. And I put a business card and I send it. Now, I didn't say what I did, what anything was about it, but what I'm looking forward to do business, right? So 3 or 4 days later, now, when you send that first email, you have a 2% chance of them responding. About 2, right? After you send that thank you note, you have about a 40 to 50% chance of them returning it with an email. So that right there, it increased to about 50%. But let's say you're a bad person and you still haven't responded. So you send them an email. Hey, George, this is Michael. I met you on such and such date at such an event. We talked about XYZ. Hey, how you doing? I'm just looking forward to speaking with you about XYZ. We're doing business. Michael. Now, that's a little bit more of a push. And if you haven't responded to me yet, bad person. Okay. But I've increased now to about 60% chance, still a very good chance, right, of you responding to me. Let's say you still have not answered me. Okay. You're a bad person, right? So I'm going to wait about 3 days. Hey, George, this is Michael. I met you on such and such date, such an event. We spoke about XYZ. Notice I do that every time, because what does that do? That keeps it in the front of your mind. Hey, I just realized that Tuesday and Wednesday of next week is open for me, right? Which day would be best for you? Okay. 2 or 3 days later, you still have not responded. You're a bad person. Okay. So, hey, George, this is Mike. I met you on such date, such an event, spoke about XYZ. I told you Tuesday and Wednesday of next week was open. Tuesday seems to be closing up. How's Wednesday? Wait another 3 days. You still haven't responded to me. Bad person. Okay. So now I brought this up to about 70% of somebody responding to this. Now, you could respond to me by saying, look, I'm really not interested, so on and so forth, right? I don't care. That's a response. That just tells me what you are about. Hey, George, this is Michael. I met you on such and such date at such and such event. We spoke about XYZ. Tuesday, I told you Tuesday and Wednesday were open, but they kind of closed up. I'm getting very busy. If any date is really good for you, please let me know. Because that closed out what I was doing. This is after about 2 weeks. That closed out what I was doing, but it left it open for you to walk through the door. Now, what I do with your information, I take your information, I put it into my CRM. I put down every point of touches that I've done with you, all the emails, the thank you note and everything else. And I put you into my drip campaign. That's it.
Now, that sounds methodical and well thought out. And I'm glad you mentioned that you put it into the CRM. So the CRM remembers for you, so you don't have to remember the follow-up points.
Absolutely. And then if you have a newsletter, that's always the best, right? You have a newsletter. Like I said, I used to be in a mortgage, and I had a 6-part newsletter that I sent out once a month. 4 parts had nothing to do with mortgage. Recipes, youth sports, or this or that. Only 2 parts had to deal with mortgages. And I sent it out. And that seems to have been the best mix of everything. When I stopped doing that newsletter, I got emails because, hey, Mike, I'm missing, this month's recipe. What is it? Things like that. But it's a good way to keep your name and your face in front of your people, because in 6 months, they may not have needed you then or now, but they may need you then. And you're just kept top of mind.
I'm curious, Michael, did what you learned in the military help you be a better networker?
That started my school of hard knocks, right? I went to the school of hard knocks because I had to do everything wrong before I did it right. Now, in the military, I was in my 20s, but I was a higher rank than people who were older than I was. So I had to tell those people what to do. Now, I can do it the Air Force way. You have to do this at this time, period. But I did it in such a way where I really was friendly with them, and they really enjoyed doing the work for me. So that started my networking and my leadership skills. I went to the NCO Academy, which was for sergeants. So once I became a sergeant, I learned how to lead accordingly. So all of that began my process. But after the military, I was a business owner. I 3 or 4 businesses. I went to corporate America. That's where I did mortgages. When I came down to Georgia, I became involved with a law firm as a sales director. So I learned how to deal with all these people. Learned how to deal with employees, vendors, customers, and it all taught me different things on how to network.
Michael, do you have some favorite phrases in these opening conversations with people?
Well, my favorite, if I don't know them, I'll compliment what they're wearing. Male or female, it doesn't make a difference. If I do know them, I may step it up just a little bit. I may ask about their husband or wife or their children or something else like that. But all doing the same thing. I'm getting them to talk about themselves.
And so I'm hearing that familiar theme, get them to talk about themselves. And one phrase that I've gotten to use with people that I found works well is I ask them, what do you do to escape? How do you refresh yourself? And I'm always surprised at what people tell me about what their activity is, what their recreation is. And here's an interesting thing. While they're talking about what they do to make themselves feel good, they're feeling good.
You're absolutely right. You're 100% right. And that, I suppose, would be your intended message, right, for them. But that's the R in my form. Have them talk recreation, right? So we're accomplishing the same thing, but, we're going about it a little bit differently, but we're getting them to talk about how they recreate, how they're enjoying themselves. And you're right. Once they talk about themselves, they're talking about doing all this, playing sports, or they're up, they're talking like, yeah, smiling, yeah, right? But we're all doing the same thing.
What can you do when the person who's talking to you won't stop talking? And they're talking not about personal, but they're talking about their business.
You have to find a way to politely interrupt, right? He's got to take a breath, or she's got to take a breath. Okay. At that time, you have to be at the ready to interject, right? And you can either interject with that you have to go, or with something else that you want to say to get them off that subject.
How can one prepare oneself before they go to an event? How do they get themselves into the right mindset? Maybe even get over nerves, the discomfort of. Not everybody wants to meet other people or talk to people. What can you say to that person to get up their courage and put on a smile, even if it's a fake smile? What else can they do to prepare?
Well, that's where a mirror comes in, right? You go and you talk to the mirror. You think of 2 or 3 things and have a conversation with yourself. But this way you get the feeling of conversing. You're getting out the cobwebs, and you're trying to come up with something. I do the same thing when I talk about, when I go to companies and I do workshops and things like that, for the customer service people. I have them keep a mirror next to the phone, because when they smile, they're looking at themselves smiling. It actually comes through the phone, right? And they're uplifting it, and they're saying, yep, this works. This is all right. So the same thing when networking, they're having a conversation with themselves in the mirror. They can say, okay, but if they really have those, like, I'm really so nervous, I really can't, I can't do it. Go outside and scream at the top of your lungs, and then come back inside. Like, okay, I got that out of my system. I'm feeling pretty good. And then have the conversation.
I remember attending events where the person talking to me was so focused on the script that they had memorized. And I could see that they were, like, with their eyes, they were trying to read the script in their mind, and they're talking like this. And it didn't matter what I did. Why do you think people do that?
Again, because they feel that they have to. They feel like, I have to get all my talking points out for you to truly understand what I'm doing. When really, at the networking event, you're just trying to get his contact information, a little bit about him, so you can move on. And you do that by cell phone, by Zoom, by email, by anything else. So if you meet somebody who is actually doing that, ask them a different question, completely different, out of the norm, anywhere else, and it kind of resets them. And like, what do you mean? Where do I go to do that? And it's like, and have them talk about that. And then that will kind of slowly get the script to go away.
Networking events happen at different times of the day. It could be a breakfast, it could be a luncheon, an afternoon, or an evening. In the evening, there's often alcohol. Do you think that helps the networking, or does that hinder?
Well, I don't drink, so to me it doesn't really matter. But for some people, they need that alcohol to even just have a drink in their hand, not necessarily drink it, but drink in their hand, and it makes them feel more sociable. I would take a club soda and keep it in my hand as if it's a drink. And I would converse with everybody, and just because everybody's a little bit more at ease until they feel like, that they go fishing. They go, oh, okay. I've got you. Let me tell you a bit more about what I do. That's not the time for it. And the people who, this is a beginning. This is the start of their whole thing, or they're very much at ease and they're talking with you socially, and you can get their contact information and talk about it further at another point. But it's very different, the networking between the dinner hour or with drinks, as opposed to the breakfast, like a B&I or something else like that, because that is all business. You have 2 minutes to spiel your whole thing. You have a networker for 10 minutes, one network a week, and he talks about his thing. But that's not the true networking. The true networking with B&I is before and after. Okay. And that's more social, right? So as you can see with the networking, the more social it really is, the more relaxed people are, the better you're going to do.
Michael, if people want to learn more about what you do, have a look at your book, read the book, or learn about the online course that you have, they can find that at your website, and that is michaelaforman.com. Forman, there's no E in there, and you can find that link in the description below. Michael, who will get the best value from your book and that course?
It's very simple. A professional that is, when I give my talks, it's usually in front of mortgage, real estate, financial, or insurance, right? Those people who truly rely on networking to promote their business. So that's the people who truly get the most out. First of all, anybody can get it. I believe networking is the basis of all business, but those 4 areas are my main focus.
And I noticed that those are service areas that are highly competitive.
Highly competitive. They are. Especially like the mortgage industry, you think everybody's going to go, oh, I need the lowest rate. But I used to have to convince people it's the customer service, right? So insurance, the same thing. The financial, you're dealing with somebody who's selling, who has $50,000 to squander, or 150,000 or $1 million, right? So you're dealing with that type of energy. So it's all up to your person and how you network and communicate. So that's why it's so important to all these industries. And of course, real estate is like, all the real estate agents that I know are so syrupy sweet and want to do anything and everything for you that they'll fall over themselves. So they're all really great in their own right, but it's all about your personality and how you promote and how you network and communicate.
Michael, if you could give advice to, let's say, a rising business leader in a corporate environment that wants to build their business and enhance their career, what advice would you give to them? One, about where to network, and two, how to know if they're making a difference?
Well, first thing is, if they have employees, okay, let's say they have 5 employees. First thing is, make sure your employees are happy, right? Make sure that they're well taken care of, because as happy as your employees are, that's what they're going to make your customers feel like. So if they're not 100% happy, they're not going to be 100% happy with your customers, right? So that's the first and foremost. Next is, I would have them, each of them, you have to give them a little bit of responsibility, right? So they feel their net worth for the company. And you give them responsibility. Okay, this week you're going to go and do this networking event, right? And you're going to talk about it. You bring them back and you kind of, you have an hour with them and talk with them and say, look, what happened? How did you react? I asked you this question. You gave this answer. But you shouldn't have done, that's probably not the best way to do it. I would have done it like this. So what you're doing is you're teaching them to be leaders. And the more leaders you have, the more responsibility that you give them, the better off you're going to be.
Powerful advice. My guest today is Michael Forman, reminding you that networking is more about giving than receiving. If you like what you heard, tell your friends and post your 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, because that helps more listeners find us. Come back every week for more practical insights to help you deliver your intended message. I'm your host, George Torok.